Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. I am your host, Ed Dentzel, and did you notice that the sun rose today? I know it's out there right now as I'm recording this show. It's out there. It's a somewhat beautiful day here in Madeira Beach, Florida. And I think I even heard the birds chirping today. I think probably a lot of babies were born today. The cars were on the road. People got promotions today. They got raises today. A lot of good things happened in the world today. Probably a lot of bad things too. That's life. But all those good things happened today despite Donald Trump having such a great primary Tuesday, this Super Tuesday that was yesterday. So the world did not end as bad as you may be feeling about it. I think it went down just as maybe not I predicted. I thought that Ted Cruz might have a chance in Illinois. I was wrong about that. But it went pretty close to the way we thought. I'm not saying the polls got it right, but just, I don't know. I think people are starting to get, even casual observer, they're starting to get a feel for how this is going to go or has been going. Donald Trump wins a lot of these states. Ted Cruz, for the most part, comes in second. Marco Rubio doesn't have a chance. John Kasich only has a chance in his home state. Of course, he won yesterday. Got all those delegates out of Ohio. Good for him. I think somebody who's just a casual observer for the last 6 months could have predicted that. They wouldn't get the numbers right, or maybe some other aspects of who voted for who. But if you've been paying attention, yesterday was not a surprise, and it was a long time coming. In fact, a lot of people predicted that yesterday would go, back in January, predicted yesterday would go like it did. So maybe that kind of softens the blow. I think it does for me. As I've told you, I know that my personal life, and I don't mean my personal life as in my like who I'm going out with or who, what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. But I'm going to be fine regarding all of this. I will be fine if Donald Trump becomes president, if he gets elected later this year and becomes president January next year. I'll be fine. I won't like it. I'll be ticked off about it, but I'll live. And in fact, I would say that my life will be unaffected about as much as any person out there. Because I don't have children at this time. I don't necessarily have any financial problems right at this point. Of course, who knows? That could change anytime depending on what the economy does, the stock market, everything else that I do. Who knows? I'll be fine. I know, on the other hand, a lot of other people, Americans, are not going to be fine. And I think that I keep that in mind every time I come to this microphone. I happen to believe that Donald Trump as president, what he would do, the things he would say are going to affect a lot of people in a negative way. And I don't mean the quote-unquote establishment. I mean a lot of regular people who just don't want to be bothered with all of it. That's my suspicion. And I try to keep that in mind, like I said, when I come to this microphone. That when I come to this microphone, I am not fighting for me. I am not a conservative necessarily for me. I'm for conservatism because I think that that is the best thing for the world. Even though, as a regular human with my own wants and desires, and I can be jealous and envious, I guess, as well as anybody. But rationally, objectively, I know that conservatism is the best political ideology for the world, even though I realize sometimes it gets in the way of my wants and needs. That's just the way it goes. And what bothers me is that Donald Trump, among other politicians, is selling something different. I think he's selling the idea that he can make everybody's problems go away. All these people who are supporting him and have, gripes, that he can make them all go away. It's not going to happen. That's what I worry about. But I know that was in a lot of people's minds when they went to vote yesterday. That's my impression. Here in Florida, where I voted, I went and voted. Not very busy here in Madeira Beach. Of course, it's just this little place. Got to check out the inside of the new council buildings that they've built within the last couple years. That was neat, but I was only in there for maybe less than 5 minutes. I voted for Ted Cruz and got out of there. And we know that Ted Cruz came in a distant third. Marco Rubio, we're going to get to him specifically, didn't smell winning Florida, as I predicted yesterday. I don't know what to make of those news articles that came out last week about early voting, and he's only 6 points off, whatever that was. Was it the truth? Was it hype? Was it just outright lies? I'm not sure. So Donald Trump rolled to the victory here in Florida. Won in North Carolina fairly easily. Won in Illinois fairly easily. Now in Missouri, as of going to record this show, it's still contested. Trump is ahead, but only by about 1,700 votes, and votes still need to be counted, absentee ballots. It should be noted that on the Democrat side, they're having an issue there too with the election being so close. Hillary's ahead of Bernie Sanders by about 1,500 votes. So there may be a recount for both parties in that state. So I guess that if you want to get something as a conservative, you're a Ted Cruz supporter, I guess you can be happy about that. And then in Illinois, Trump won. And then we come to Ohio, where all you can say is it seems that John Kasich is more popular in Ohio than Marco Rubio is in Florida. And actually by a wide margin. Was I hoping that John Kasich won? I guess I had to. Given, and we're going to get into what's going to happen from now on regarding the math. But I'm not a John Kasich fan. As you know, I don't consider him to be very conservative, even though he thinks he himself is conservative. Must be more popular than I thought. You should know that I have a sister who lives in Ohio. She lives in Canfield, Ohio, and has lived in Ohio since the 1970s. Don't want to give her age away. And I don't talk politics with her that much. She's no Donald Trump fan. I know that much. But I don't know how she feels about John Kasich. I don't know. She probably went and voted yesterday. I haven't talked to her about it. I guess I should have asked her, what's your average Ohioan's opinion of this guy? I'm glad that he won to keep those delegates away from Donald Trump. On the other hand, I just didn't know that John Kasich was that popular there. And it's a little distressing, being that he is not conservative in some of the things that he's done there. And I think a lot of these statements about the Ohio economy getting better while he's been there, maybe it has, but I don't know if it's because of him. So it's just maybe a little hard for me to understand. Not that I thought that Ted Cruz was going to win there. Not that I thought that Donald Trump was going to win there, but John Kasich won it fairly easily, which I will admit is a little bit of a surprise to me. So I guess you just have to reconcile the idea that there are a lot more kooks in Florida voting for Trump than there are kooks in Ohio. It's just, I don't know how else to put it. I know that's not, calling names is not something I like to do on this show, but that's what comes to mind. And it's not even close. It seems like people in my state of Florida have totally bought into the Trump phenomenon, whereas in Ohio, they still look at their governor as being better than Donald Trump. And I guess that's good for John Kasich. Good for him. So after this is all over, who knows what will happen in Missouri. Donald Trump is going to lengthen his lead. He got the 99 delegates out of Florida. There's still a long way to the nomination. And given that John Kasich won in Ohio, we know he's not going away. But he kept those, how many ever delegates it was, away from Donald Trump, which makes it even harder for Donald Trump to get those 1,237 delegates before the convention. Which means we may go to a situation, a contested convention, where we get there and nobody has the required amount. Now, if you don't know, if you didn't see this today, I found this in a Bloomberg article. Donald Trump just explicitly said, you know what, if we fall 20 delegates short or 100 delegates short and I don't get the nomination, then there will be riots. That's what he said. I have it right here. I'm looking at a Bloomberg. I think you'll have riots if I don't get the nomination, if I'm so many delegates short and I don't get it. This goes back to what's been going on at his events within at least the last week with punching and protesting and everything. And I think I've been reading a lot about that. About, you have to remember Donald Trump. You have to remember who these people are who are protesting at his events, and you can't blame it all on Trump. And really, I think a lot of conservatives have been going too easy. People who oppose his presidency, but then give him a break of what has been going on at his events. Because they haven't been going on at other events, just at his. So he and his people must have something to do with it. Not 100%, but they at least have something to do with it. And then you understand that his first instinct to say is, if I fall 20 or 100 delegates short and I don't get the nomination, then there will be riots. Are you saying that your supporters are violent? Are you saying that you people who vote Donald Trump will go out into the streets, burn stores, overturn cars, break windows, attack cops? Is that what you're saying, Donald Trump? Over you. Over you. Because I can tell you, I'm not going to go riot if Ted Cruz doesn't get the nomination. If Donald Trump gets the nomination, I'm not going to go run around the streets of Madeira Beach, lighting bushes on fire, and if it's just myself, overturning scooters. I don't think I can overturn a car by myself. Overturning scooters and bicycles. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'll live. As I said earlier in the show, I'll live. I'll get by. I'll figure out a way. Because really, that's what I've been doing most of my adult life. Just figure something out. And if that means I have to, grin and bear it and not allow these trolls on Twitter to get to me and all of those Trump supporters laughing in my face, not literally, but figuratively, knowing that I'm a never Trump guy, then that's just what you have to do. And you know what? That's just part of being an adult. There's just certain things in life that you just have to put up with. Unfortunately, as I said earlier, I think the Trump supporters think otherwise. If they don't get what they want, like Donald Trump says, they'll go into the streets and riot. If they don't like some protester, they'll just punch the person in the face. If the campaign manager doesn't like one of the reporters, he'll just grab her by the arm and yank her away. I think what we're finding because of all of this is that it's not so much... more and more it seems that there's more than just an ideological difference. What's cracking up the Republican Party at this time. It's more than just somebody's for amnesty, another person's not for amnesty. Somebody's against the establishment, somebody's for the establishment, to use their words. It's more than that. It's how you react to adversity. And that A word has been coming up a lot. I think because of me going to the gym and seeing that's one of those pictures or motivational posters. If you go to the gym, you know what I'm talking about. Adversity is a word that comes up in a lot of those motivational speeches that people give, and then of course, like I said, you see it on pictures and posters at the gym. Kind of a way to get you in the mental mind frame that you need to get one more rep, out of your bench press or something like that. And what you're seeing is how people react to adversity. And that is different from what people think about how the world should be. Okay? People can have all sorts of the same ideas, but how you enact them is probably going to divide people. It's no different than people deciding to go on vacation. Everybody decides to go on vacation, but they have a hard time determining where they want to go. One person wants to go on a cruise. Another one wants to go on an all-inclusive resort. One person wants to go into the wilds of Alaska. And it's hard to jive all of that. It's hard to try to find a happy medium in all of it. And in the end, nobody's going to be happy. And what's going on now with Republicans and with Trump versus everybody else is that there seems to have developed a bunch of people that they're just not angry. There's a lot of people who are angry. It's more than, we now see, I think, that it's more than anger. A lot of people are angry. A lot of people are frustrated, a lot of people depressed for lots of different reasons. It's what you do with it that really matters. Remember, as I said months ago, anger is not a plan. It's just an emotion. It's no different than happiness, sadness, envy, anything else. It's just an emotion. It's what you do with that emotion, how you interact with the world, that really matters. And what we're seeing is that there are a bunch of people within the Republican Party who have probably been in this party for a while, and I know that there are a lot of Democrats and independents getting involved in this as well, who see violence and like it, who see violence as a way to a political end and like it. And if you want to, being that I've been following politics for decades, and I've been doing some form of this show for a while, only not been on Red State Talk Radio, not quite 2 years yet, but doing a podcast on my own website for a few years before getting on here. But being just a consumer of news, you know what the truth is? The truth is we should have seen this coming. All right, we should have seen this coming. This faction of people who we normally agree with, who, as a conservative, I think the same of 75% of the time, and only different with them 25% of the time, but they are a little bit more prone to pushing people around in violence and things like that than I am. I think if we go back 10 years, you can see it. But we maybe didn't quite understand that at some point it would come to fruition. And this is the reason that I disagree with those conservatives who oppose Donald Trump but are giving him a break regarding those events and pretty much putting most of the blame on the protesters that show up. Those protesters wouldn't be there if they didn't know that they could, if they thought they wouldn't get into a fight. Those Black Lives Matter, the social justice warriors, whoever these people are, whether they're paid to be there or not, they see this as a way to get what they want. And violence is supposed to be, violence in the name of politics is supposed to be something that's limited to the left. To the left side of a government policy in the United States. Going back to the Black Panthers and all of those kinds of groups up to the modern day. The fascists, the communists, the socialists, all of these revolutions coming from the left. Whereas in modern politics in the United States, the right, the conservative side, has stayed away from that. Even to the point where, the stories come out when Tea Party people start first getting together and organizing, and they'd have some event somewhere, and then when they'd leave, all the trash would be picked up. It'd be like they never were even there. We know what happens when Occupy Wall Street goes somewhere. It ends up looking like a junkyard. The place ends up looking like, where they take your garbage every couple days. Right? But now it seems that has seeped over to our side. And it's disgusting. And frankly, Donald Trump has made it okay. Making excuses for his campaign manager, not telling his protesters to behave themselves, openly saying that he'll pay for whatever they do. And I know that was going through that old guy's head last week when he punched that protester. As the protester was leaving, the protest was over. If you watch the video, it was over, and the guy still punched that black woman, black girl, black woman. I don't know how old she was. And it's disgusting. But we now see that is the main difference now. What people, not on the right, what people do with the emotions that they have. It's the defining line is not anger, because there's a lot of people who are angry. The defining line is what is socially accepted civil behavior regarding all of this. And really, that truthfully is more dangerous than us just having different opinions about policy. And not just dangerous from a political point of view, but from a welfare point of view, not government welfare, but the well-being of people point of view. And see, I realize that in history, eventually a lot of disagreements have come to violence when a deal could not be worked out. I mean, that's how World War II got started. The United States and Japan had a disagreement. We wanted to cut off their oil because where they were expanding, going into China. They couldn't work something out. Japan comes over, bombs Pearl Harbor. The reason they did that is they wanted to take out the aircraft carriers, which they knew would be able to stop them in their expansion. That's why Pearl Harbor happened. And there are many, many other examples of that. The difference is with what is going on in 2015 and 2016 on the Republican side is that these people who are doing this don't want to have debate. In fact, their leader, Donald Trump, has just said he's not doing the next Fox News debate. He's not going to do it. He doesn't want to do it. And in addition, these people can't be talked to rationally. They're not rational because the person that they support changes his mind all the time on anything. So we already know that these people's their idea of words is flexible. So it's no wonder that they don't want to talk, that they don't want to bargain. And in fact, ironically, they don't want to make deals. And that's why I don't believe that this anger that they have is very righteous. I mean, we have all lots of good reasons to be angry with what goes on in the world, right? Not just big ideas, but little ideas, just in your own personal lives. You have a right to be disgusted by something that doesn't go your way, but your first instinct isn't usually to torch somebody's car or to punch somebody. You try to work it out. Now, I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, well, we've tried to work it out, and those people, the establishment, quote unquote, the establishment, won't listen to us. Well, now that I see who you support, and now I see that you'll just go along with anything this guy says, it's no wonder people don't listen to you. It seems you'll go for anything. No wonder. No wonder. So I don't have a lot of pity on you. I don't. Your anger is perfectly fine, but how you handle it, in the United States at least, is supposed to be unacceptable when it comes to politics. So, but that's what's going on. You could see that now. It's not a policy difference. It's a behavior difference. And dare I say it, I'm not going to put all of the blame on necessarily any average citizen who is supporting Donald Trump. The truth is that they have been spurred into it by him. You know, I perfectly believe if Donald Trump had not popped up this campaign season and there wasn't anybody in the race like him, we wouldn't be having these issues. All the violence would be kept on the left, would be able to have discussions about policy on the right that you're supposed to have at these debates. Right? It would just be different. But because he's involved and he's a manipulator, he has coaxed these people into thinking that whatever he says is right, even if it's flip-flopping one way or the other, to the point where punching people who are exhibiting their free speech, as bad as it is okay. And giving him a pass if his campaign manager grabs a woman by the arm and yanks her away. Okay. What are you going to do? I don't know how you talk rationality to this. I don't know how you get rational with these people. And I don't feel bad necessarily talking badly about them. For all you people who may run into the show who are Trump supporters, I don't feel bad talking badly about you. The truth is, if you listen to this show long enough, you're going to probably hear me talk badly about anybody, including myself. And that there's this idea that we shouldn't make fun of Trump supporters out there is kind of weird. It's like treating them like little kids. And maybe that's not too far from the truth, being that it seems that they act like little kids, acting out when they don't get their way and going along with their leader who wants to do the same. It's going to be ugly. I mean, hey, whether there is violence or not, or riots or not in Cleveland at the convention in 2016, it's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly. You know what my opinion is. If the Republican Party needs to disintegrate or something like that, I think that is a huge mistake. I think that that's going to give Democrats, liberals in this country, an advantage for decades. All right? And I'm willing to lose the presidency to make sure that doesn't happen, especially if that possible president is Donald Trump. That's where I am. That's where I am. But I got to go to the break. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk.
Red State Talk Radio, feeding the hunger.
Hey, this is Alfonso Rachel with PJTV, Zone Nation, and the founder and drummer of 20 Pound Sledge, and you're listening to RedStateTalkRadio.com, the dominant force in conservative internet talk radio.
I'm a mom, and just like millions of other women, that's why I own guns. We're responsible, we're law-abiding, and we're everything that makes America strong. Every day, we're willing to use a firearm to defend our families. But the media will never tell those stories. If a mom puts a gun to the face of a home-invading thug and makes him run for his life, the story gets buried. But if she's unarmed and murdered, the cameras will be at the scene before the police. It's time for moms like me to speak out. We are the majority. We demand the freedom to defend our families, and we challenge the media to tell the truth about our rights. I'm the National Rifle Association of America, and I'm freedom's safest place.
What does it mean for a country when its citizens turn on the news and expect to be misled? Because the reporters who once served as freedom's fearless watchdogs feel like distant characters in a fading memory. Today, too many journalists are just actors, playing to their boss's script. Why tell the truth when you can sell a lie for more? There's a price to pay for all this dishonesty. If the free press won't protect free people, it's our job to demand they do it. Do the work you say you do. Aim your First Amendment against hypocrisy and corruption like a hammer of the people. Kick down the doors of any leader who deceives us, and never tolerate dishonesty from your own ranks. That's what the good guys demand. We're the 5 million men and women in the National Rifle Association of America, and we will not play along. Join us today.
This is Don Newen with Cowboy Logic Radio, and if you don't go to bed every night absolutely fatigued from trying to restore America from the destruction that is taking place, then you're simply not doing enough. Join me late night Tuesday, early Wednesday, 12:05 a.m. for Cowboy Logic Radio on RedStateTalkRadio.com.
Back at the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio. Let's move on to something else. Maybe I'll come back. I want to touch maybe on a couple more points if I can get to it by the end of the show. But let's move on to what's hot right now. Marco Rubio has decided to suspend his campaign. In looking at just what happened yesterday, I think it's pretty obvious that Marco Rubio choosing to stay in while 99% of the signs were that he was going to lose his home state of Florida. You could see from the results yesterday that it really hurt Ted Cruz. Now, maybe Marco Rubio did that on purpose. I don't know. Being that they weren't attacking each other, the last two debates tells me that maybe Marco Rubio didn't do it on purpose to hurt Ted Cruz, but he did stay in on purpose. It wasn't by accident. And he definitely cost Ted Cruz winning definitely in Missouri, because it's too close to call. And I would say maybe to a little lesser extent in North Carolina. I don't know what Ted Cruz could have done with Rubio's votes in Illinois. And here in Florida, Ted Cruz beats Marco Rubio or beats Donald Trump. If every single Marco Rubio voter would have gone for Ted Cruz, then Ted Cruz would have won it. But that's going to be a big deal. And so it wasn't just that Marco Rubio hurt his immediate political future in deciding to stay in. Now, once again, I'm going to say this for the record. For the record. Once we started early voting in Florida, and I know that goes back a while, once that happened, the odds of Marco Rubio dropping out before Florida greatly diminished. It greatly diminished. And the longer that early voting went on from day 1 to day 5 to day 10, it became more less likely that he'd drop out before Florida. In doing so, I understand the logic of it, but that's one more reason why I'm not for early voting. Because it gives candidates a reason to stay in when they shouldn't. My personal belief is that if we didn't have early voting and every poll showed that Marco Rubio was down by 15% or even more, because he lost by more than that yesterday, right? And there was no early voting and all of his people had to show up and vote on yesterday, except maybe for absentee people, then I think that he would have dropped out weeks ago and said, don't vote for me. If he would have seen these polls keep popping up, down by 16%, down by 15%, down by 20%, down by 18%, I think he would have called it a day. But with the early voting, he couldn't do that because I'm guessing he didn't, maybe he was hoping, maybe there was a small part of him that was hoping for a miracle, but just didn't want to do that to the voters who had cast their votes already. And in doing so, he hurt Ted Cruz and maybe even John Kasich in some of these other states where they might have been able to, like I said, in Ted Cruz's case, win at least a state or two and pull at the very least, pull quite a few delegates from Donald Trump. And it comes back to that prisoner dilemma that not just myself, but a lot of people have been writing about and talking about for like the last month. Do you want Marco Rubio to stay in? Do you want him to drop out? What should Ted Cruz do? We need to get this to a 2-man race. Well, maybe it'd be better for the 3-man race because then we can take even more delegates from Donald Trump. All these calculations. What went wrong with Marco Rubio? I think I detailed it yesterday. I thought it was odd that he got involved in the first place. With everybody, I read something today that said that he jumped into the race end of March, beginning of April of last year. So like 2 weeks from now, not quite a year ago. 2 weeks short of a year ago is when he jumped into the race. And at that point, I thought, why is he doing this? There were already quite a few people who were going to run, older guys. I didn't know if any women were going to jump in. It was just all men at that time. Being that he was young, he could afford to sit this out. Being that Jeb Bush was already running, already a guy who was well known in Florida, kind of split up that Florida vote. Now I know that's not what went on, but that was at least a good opinion, I think, at the time. And really, you have to believe that what Marco Rubio has done over the last year has hurt his political aspirations more than helped them, which is something that, I kind of saw back then. I'm thinking this can only maybe go bad for him if he gets embarrassed, especially given that he was up for re-election this year. Remember, Ted Cruz, he's also a new senator like Marco Rubio, but Ted Cruz isn't up for re-election until 2018. Marco Rubio up for re-election this year. It's a little different. So that was confusing to me. All the other guys being who had done a lot of good things were in there. Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker at the time, others. And then he jumped in, and now here a year later, he gets creamed in his home state, not even close, and he's not running for re-election in the Senate. And maybe he needs to take some time away from politics. He's going to take a look back at this. And we know we're going to want to get into the issues. We know that the Gang of Eight hurt him. We know that one other debate hurt him. The debate before New Hampshire and his interactions with Chris Christie. He did not run. A very good speaker, but you saw a few too many stories where I'm not going to say that he's lazy. I mean, hey, as a Gen Xer, he's right around my age. I couldn't be more than pleased. I couldn't be more pleased that somebody, a guy like Marco Rubio, is part of my generation. My generation needs more politicians, men and women like Marco Rubio, even though I don't agree with him on everything. And I'd say the same about Ted Cruz. He's around my age too. It's just that he looks about 20 years older than I do, even though we're about the same age. I look about 10 years younger. He looks about 10 years older. So I'm very proud to say that those guys are part of my generation. But Marco Rubio on the issues, going back to the laziness thing, there's just a few articles, and I think you'll see them if you do the research. Just some questions about, he was only doing 2 events a day while Ted Cruz was doing 5 a day. Wasn't doing a lot of face-to-face work as much as some of the other candidates. Just not even the issues, but just him getting out there, which is kind of surprising given that he seems like a decent guy. Doesn't seem like a standoffish guy. Doesn't seem like he has a problem in crowds, but those stories are out there if you want to believe them. And I think maybe that hurt him as well. In the end, it just didn't go the way anybody thought it was going to go for the last year once Donald Trump got involved and all of those people started supporting him. A lot of people had to maneuver, and some people did it well, and most people did not. We're now seeing that Marco Rubio did not do it well. He won Washington, D.C., and he won Minnesota. Couldn't win his own state. At least John Kasich can say he won his home state. And got all the delegates from it. Even though I know Marco Rubio is still ahead of John Kasich in the delegates count. But John Kasich is still around. Marco Rubio isn't. Ted Cruz has been able to maneuver to a point where he is the best viable conservative choice, and a head-on-head matchup with Donald Trump, he would probably win. And in those polls with Ted Cruz against whoever the Democrat nominee is, Ted Cruz also has a very good shot of winning, much better chance than Donald Trump. But Marco Rubio, he has time to recover. What he's going to do, who knows? I happen to believe that in 2020, the year 2020, he's going to have another good chance. A lot of these people are going to have another good chance no matter who gets elected. I think Donald Trump is going to be a disaster, an absolute 100% disaster that is going to open it up, the chances to all these people. First of all. In fact, I'll go on the record and say I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump got impeached in his first 4 years, given what's going on. That would not surprise me at all. So it'll either be that or Hillary Clinton will be president and there'll be an open primary for the Republicans in 2020. So Marco Rubio, if he wants to get back in, he'll have a chance to do that. Hopefully, he learns a lot of lessons from that. And I say that for all of the people who have been involved, including Carly Fiorina and whoever else, men or women. They can learn something from this. Now they can just sit back. Of course, some of them, some of them have to still have jobs to do, being governors or whatever else. But they'll take a look at what happened in the last year and see how they can improve themselves. Now, as far as the convention goes and what Donald Trump was saying about, well, if I don't get it, there's going to be a riot. Well, I think that after yesterday, a contested convention, as far as everything that I read, is a very good chance. More than 50-50 chance now. And as I have written in my notes, and I've said this before, if you are a political scientist, it's a great time to be alive. If you're a Larry Sabato guy, a Michael Barone type of guy, it just does not get any better than this. In fact, it probably hasn't been this good for learning about all of this stuff and watching all of the back and forth and where voters are going to go since probably 1992. Granted, 2000 with Bush versus Gore and going to the Supreme Court, that was fascinating. But just the sheer maneuvering for votes and with Bush 41, Clinton, and Perot, this is about as good as that. And what's going to happen between now and the convention. Now, I don't know how much further John Kasich is going to... I think he's going to go back to getting blown out. And we'll see if he can still raise money. I mean, he could do it to this point saying, I can win Ohio, I can win Ohio, I can win Ohio, and people kept sending him money. Well, where is he going to win now? And we know he doesn't have the framework. We know that he doesn't have the money, for example, that Ted Cruz does. So that's a big factor. But, as I told you, I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. I'm going to say that again. Not going to do it. There is an article where, let me look at my notes for a second. Did I write down where it is? Somewhere I saw this article about how conservatives are looking at a third-party run. I'm against that too. I think that this is one of those situations where we have to grin and bear it and just say we're just not going to vote. I'm not going to change my attitude toward third parties just because it's convenient for me now. I was against them in 2012. I've been against them in 2008. I was against them back in 1992 with Ross Perot getting involved. I'm against them. I think the better course of action, if you really want to send a message, and what would be the most constitutional thing to do, is to not vote. Just say if Donald Trump's going to be the nominee, then I'm not voting. These people have to earn my vote. None of these people have earned my vote. I'm staying home. I have to... how do I want to put this? The nomination process, as I've said, even before Donald Trump became popular, has to be altered. You know my attitude. I think that you should go by the most Republican states first and go downwards. Iowa shouldn't be first. New Hampshire shouldn't be first. South Carolina, even though it's a Republican state, it shouldn't be near the beginning either. You make the states relevant that go along with your party the most. And I've said that way before, once again, ever before Donald Trump came into being. That's why I've said, you know what state should be first? Utah, Wyoming, Idaho. Maybe you get into Oklahoma, some of those other states. You start there, and little by little, you work your way toward the states that go purple. And then if you have to, you get to states that vote blue all the time, like New York and California. Now, I know those two states are toward the end anyway, but they should stay there. And Oklahoma, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, they should all be moved up into January where Iowa now resides. Now, I know the people in Iowa never, if they can, they're not going to let that happen. But that's the way the Republican Party should run it. And maybe that because of what has gone on with Donald Trump this year, this election year, they'll learn from that. Because in putting some of these states that were favorable to him at the beginning, you kept them in it. A guy who's not conservative, who really attracts more Democrats than you'd like, blows off your base, the conservatives, loses in those states that are most Republican, like Oklahoma, like Wyoming, like Idaho, and he's going to get blown out in Utah when that happens. That's the way you fix this. You know, Texas, for example, all those states that tend to be most Republican. Now, I know that Donald Trump wants some of these southern states that go Republican in presidential elections like Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. And you know what? If we get around to those states, those second or third wave of states, and he would have won them, then I can live with that. But you got to treat the people who are the most Republican the best. Those states that are the most Republican, the best. My opinion. Reward them. And then if it changes 4 years down the road, you switch them again. Changes 4 years down the road, you alter it again. Thus, people are always going to want to be relevant, meaning they're going to get out and vote so they can keep their state relevant. So, just an idea of mine that probably would have kept Donald Trump's success to a minimum. I think he still would have won some states, but altering it, we wouldn't be in the situation that we are now. But I think it makes good political sense. But once again, this isn't against Donald Trump. I've been saying this for several years, that the primary season for Republicans makes no sense. And, well, it really came back to bite them this year. Because the way I looked at it, it's maybe a little too many Republican wishy-washy states at the beginning that could really allow somebody who's really wishy-washy on policy to get some delegates. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened. Let's move on to something else. Just one quick thing before I go. And I mentioned this because I'm going shooting today, but gun sales continue to boom. Every month, it seems, gun sales are setting records. Barack Obama is the greatest gun salesman in the history of the world. Hillary Clinton, if she becomes president, she'll be the greatest gun salesman in the world. And dare I say it, if Donald Trump continues to court violence among his supporters, you know what? He's also going to be the best gun salesman in the history of the world. And talk way he does about beating up people who don't think like he does. And I finally admitted to my dad yesterday that the reason, as you know, my first reason I got a gun was due to the Paris attacks. But I also have to tell you, know what, the reason I got a gun? Because I do this show. And I know I see it on my Twitter feed and hate mail and things. I tick off a lot of people. And I'm sure it is the way for all the other people on Red State Talk Radio as well. And so I got to arm myself. So any of you Trump supporters not liking me and being that I talk about where I live, I would think twice before coming to check out Ed Dentzel in Madeira Beach, Florida. All right? Just so you know, I have a gun and I'm going to the range. And I'm going to keep doing the show no matter how much you hate me. But I got to go. You can email me at edwarddenzel@reagan.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Dentzel Domain, all one word, no space in between. edwarddenzel.com is where you can find all of my old Red State Talk Radio shows. You can also find them at Podomatic, Podbean, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Go to edwarddenzel.com/book. You can download for free the first chapter of my next novel called The Comebacks. You can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. It's been a pleasure talking to you tonight. You've been listening to the Dentzel Domain on Red State Talk Radio, and yes, the sun will come up tomorrow. Good night.